Real talk, raw faith, stay unfiltered. Welcome back to Echoes Unfiltered. I'm your host, Sam Stratton. There's a moment when the badge doesn't define you anymore. When the paycheck, the uniform, the identity, they all fade. For most people, that moment feels like loss. But for today's guest, it became the start of his calling. Bryce Boldus grew up in a law enforcement family down in Kenosha, Wisconsin. He stepped into a police department up north during one of the hardest times in modern policing, when officers were under a national microscope and the job was changing by the minute. But God had a bigger plan, because sometimes obedience looks like staying in the fight, and sometimes obedience looks like walking away from it. Bryce laid down the badge to follow Jesus. He followed Jesus into the mission field, to places like Zanzibar and beyond, preaching the gospel where most people wouldn't dare go. Today we're talking about obedience, calling, and what it really means to go when God says go. Well, let's get Bryce on the line, and let's get into it. All right, Bryce, welcome to the program. I'm glad to have you on here today. Thanks for taking time out of your day. Just got a few questions about where you came from and where you're headed. So I guess the first question I would have for you is, when did you first feel God tug on your heart towards law enforcement?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. When I was in college, I started in a computer science program and immediately decided that I could not stand the program and started looking around. And first thing that I found was law enforcement as something that kind of had something I was aware of, something I kind of had a knowledge of since my father had a long career in law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of got a little interested in it. I had a friend who was also doing the program, so I figured I'd give it a try. And as soon as I started to get a little bit deeper into the program, I learned that I had a bit of a passion for working with mental health, the rehabilitative side that law enforcement has. I know it's not that every part of what happens in law enforcement is all based off of just working with mental health, but a lot of it does, and that's becoming an increasingly large problem.
Oh, absolutely. It's huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and getting to see that and going, wow, this is something where I could step into that space and kind of be a person in a place where there's a lot of people who just kind of get thrown to the side, and being able to work in that field, something that intrigued me, and so I continued working through it. I got a degree in criminal justice and rehabilitation with a minor in psychology, and a lot of that was just working on, part of it was also like an emphasis in counseling. So a lot of it was just looking at how to work with other people, especially people who are going through traumatic experiences, people who are difficult to work with, people who are just having a hard time in life, and giving them an opportunity to work with somebody who's going to be a little bit more compassionate than just the everyday cop.
Yeah. And I think you're really getting into what community policing is about when you dig into these things. I mean, granted, when I became a police officer and went to the academy, we're talking it was over 20 years ago now. But at that time, it was huge talking about community policing. That was the big push, getting to know your community, getting involved in your community. And it sounds like you took that even a step further.
Yeah, and a lot of, I only got into law enforcement a little more than 5 years ago is when I was really starting to get into looking at doing the academy and all that. And that's when community policing and a lot of like behavioral health programs were starting to pop up all over the country.
Oh, absolutely. And you were getting into it right in the thick of it. I guess I would call it right in the thick of it, because 2020 and years around that area were not good times to be a police officer.
Yes. I was in the police academy when a lot of the Black Lives Matters riot happened across the Midwest, and there was times where we're in the academy and we're just like, oh, do we all just want to really be a part of what's going on here? A lot of us kind of stuck with it. Some of us didn't. But I spent the better part of the last 5 years working as a law enforcement officer in the Fox Valley area.
Okay.
And what was really, really cool is I was expecting the opportunities for me to be a little bit not immediate when it came to like behavioral health programs. A lot of departments want to have you have 5-6 years on before you even get the opportunity to apply to be in the department's program.
They want to make sure you have the cop part down.
Yes, yes, and that is really, really important. And you got to know the communities too.
Mm-hmm.
But I ended up switching the department I was working at and working at a smaller department. And when I was in my interview, the chief said, "Well, if that's something that you have a passion for, that's something our city wants to have."
Hmm.
Pretty much as soon as I was off probation, they started to really throw me into first kind of steps of behavioral health policing. And I never got fully certified by the time I resigned, but the opportunities were all there, and nobody else at our department wanted to do it. So anytime there's anything mental health related, it was really, really cool to get to step into that. What I had, my passion of why I wanted to get into law enforcement,
Yeah.
and really utilize the skills that I had through the counseling classes that I had and the mental health based classes that I had.
I would say, as somebody who was in law enforcement for some time, that you have to have a special calling on your life, I think, to deal with those type of things. Because, as you just mentioned, most officers are like, nah, I don't want to deal with that. It's hard. It's hard enough being a cop just to be a cop. And then to be a cop and have to deal with extra issues and know how to work with people. I mean, because you're not really using the use of force continuum on these subjects, because that use of force is going to be different,
Mhm.
I would assume.
Yeah,
So,
it all goes back to looking at more of the professional communication of knowing that the person who you're dealing with at times is not going to be in the right state of mind to be able to have a full conversation with you. So you really just have to learn how to address the needs
mhm.
of what's in the current moment to get them to a spot where you can then have a conversation with them. A lot of what we would do is we would find the people in our community that would need a little bit more help, and those would come through. I was getting calls for them at some point for
Mhm.
either them having a mental health crisis, suicide attempt, whatever it ends up becoming, whether it be just a manic state. That would be kind of trigger the red flag of going, all right, this is a person that we're probably going to end up having a lot of law enforcement contacts with.
Mhm.
So let's find a way to get connected with them before the next big thing happens. We don't want to get to a spot where we're having to use force. We want them to go, oh, this is the officer I was talking to just the other day, and he's a pretty cool guy.
Right.
I feel a lot more calm and at peace just knowing that that's the officer I'm dealing with and not just somebody who I've never met before. There was
Right.
one call I remember going to, a child in her 13, 14-year-old. She had a lot of mental health concerns, would often fight and get really aggressive with her mom, and ends up pulling a knife on her mom while they were fighting. And so I
Ooh.
got called and ended up going on out there, and it was somebody I had conversations with multiple times. And as soon as I walked in the door, both of them turned and looked at me and go, "Oh, it's Officer Boldus." And completely became to the point where I called off all the backup units because there was no more disturbance at that point. And I was able to just have a regular conversation with them and figure out where we got to this point, and created a space where not only was everybody a whole lot safer, resolutions and resources weren't being used just because I had that specialization. So
Yeah, and I think with the departments you worked, it was a good call having a police officer do that type of work. I'm not saying that social workers going out on some calls aren't okay, but I think we both probably think, as former police officers, that there's certain calls like that call you were just talking about. If they just sent in some social worker that nobody knew, we don't know how that's going to end up.
Mhm.
But you did the community policing, you got to know the people, you are
Mhm.
trained in this, and it really de-escalated the situation as soon as you walked in the door.
Yes, it really just creates a opportunity for there to be de-escalated resolutions to calls.
Right.
And even with like social workers, I know the county or department that was working in our area, they had social workers that would ride along on both nights and day shifts,
Mm.
and really good, useful tool, especially since a lot of those calls would be the same people repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
But at times, the social worker wouldn't be allowed to go onto a scene based off of the safety concerns.
Right.
And if you have an officer who can step into that space, it is a lot easier to have that. You're eliminating the middleman at that point
Absolutely.
and getting somebody the direct care that they need.
Yeah. I want to get a little bit into more of your story and what you're doing now. But in order to get to that, we need to talk about laying down the badge. So for you, what was the hardest part about laying the badge down?
The hardest part was the fact that I really did love it. I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed my department that I worked with. I had a great chief, which I know not often is something where you can just sit down and just chit chat with your chief. I
Yeah.
would walk right on into the office sometimes if I was on a shift and I knew I could burn an hour just by sitting and talking with him, and it would always be a good conversation. We'd talk about football, important stuff too, but just whatever it was to pass the time, and just really really cool chiefs that our department had.
So a chief who created a relationship, not just boss.
Correct. And I think that's some of the value of having a smaller department too, was the fact that if you were working a day shift, the chief was there and then you were there. And so it was really only the two of you. And if it was a night shift, you'd still get to see him every once in a while, but there wasn't a whole lot of people that you'd have to get to know.
Yeah.
So that was part of the benefit of it. But a chief who was really just cared about the guys on the team.
That's good.
And we had a good group of guys. Obviously, there's always going to be some rough edges, but for the most part, it wasn't really all that bad. And I only had about 3.5 years on by the time I resigned from the department I was at, and I was already at the second in seniority on the team. So that was also part of the the hard part of leaving. But
yeah, when you made that decision to lay the badge down, you kind of talked about it a little bit. What were the major fears, or did you have to face any fears in order to obey?
Really, I think the hard part was figuring out how to transition the change and going, all right, I know the Lord has called me into a different direction, and I'm confident that's where He wants me to be, whatever that looks like. But I just kind of going like, I've been a cop for almost 5 years. What does that look like to now step out of that?
Yeah.
And then having the concerns of going like, do my skills translate well into doing ministry? Or do I have the ability to really let go of everything that I was doing? Am I still going to be a police officer 24/7 when I'm outside of working as a law enforcement officer?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the concerns of being able to separate where I had been and to then step into where I was going. That's still kind of a new thing for me too. There was plenty of times while I was the last couple months where I've had times where I'm just like, did I really make the right choice? I feel like I keep stepping into wanting to be a cop in certain situations. There's a lot of times where it's trying to sit down and going like, all right, how can I get to a spot where I can control the situation I'm in so that we can come to the resolution of where we're at? Even if it's not a complex or dangerous situation, it can just be sitting down and having meetings with people.
Yeah.
Trying to control all of that and always being aware of what people's attitudes are and trying to read people. And it's kind of hard to, after doing that 24/7 for so long, to separate that. And so that was really my main concern, was trying to figure out how to take the good parts of, obviously the Lord put me in law enforcement for the amount of time that I was in there, to get the skills and the ability and the learning opportunities that I needed, then walk into ministry when He called me to it.
Yeah.
And so finding out the ways to kind of navigate that.
Now, I did a little research on you here, and I see one of the first places you went was Zanzibar. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. It was actually right about the time that I started working at the last department I was at for about 3.5 years.
Oh.
I just left working at one of the larger departments in the area to find a spot where I fit in a little bit more and could have a little bit more connection with the community I was in. And there was about a 6-month gap in between employment, and when I was in that space, I ended up getting to get a little bit more free time, and so I started attending a small group at my church that I hadn't gotten an opportunity to attend, and ended up running into a missionary who was there, and he had no intention of going to that small group. He was planning on going to teach at the high school group that was going on in the same building at the same time, and nobody told him that it was canceled for that night. So he just hopped in with our group, and I remember listening to, his name is Zach.
Tell me the Lord doesn't have His hand on every second.
It felt exactly like the Lord was calling me right into it. I remember sitting down and talking with him afterwards, and I was like, "Hey, you seem like the one person in this room that I really need to get to know, because you know the Bible, you just know your stuff." And he said, "Why don't we get coffee tomorrow?" And it's like, well, I'm unemployed at the moment, so it worked out really, really well. And the one thing that he said during that small group, and I don't even remember what we were studying, and he doesn't either. I've asked him since, but he ended up saying our relationship with the Lord is something we should always be looking for the next step in. If we're staying stagnant in our relationship, then we're in the wrong place. We should always be growing and moving forward.
Amen.
So I went home after that, prayed that, and I was like, God, just give me the next opportunity to grow in you. And so I sat down with Zach for coffee the next day, and 20 minutes into the conversation, he told me he was a missionary. He invited me to do full-time missions work right then and there. He's like, Bryce, I feel like the Lord's asking me to tell you to do our organization's training program. And I looked at him and I told him, absolutely not. I had just gotten an opportunity to do the interview for the department that I was going to end up at. I was pretty positive that the Lord wanted me to continue doing law enforcement. And he's like, well, what about a 2-week trip to Zanzibar? And at the time, I had no idea where Zanzibar was. And he said, it's a little tropical island off the coast of Africa, and you'll just be doing ministry for a couple weeks. And it's like, well, that sounds like something I'd absolutely enjoy. Never got an opportunity to travel outside of the country except Canada once. So it was a neat experience for me. At the time, I had a lot of free time, and when I agreed, he said, all right, well, you have 1 week to get fully funded because we have to buy the flights for this trip.
No pressure.
At the end of this week. And I was like, well, all right, well, that would have been nice to know before you invited me. By the Lord's hand, I was fully funded in that 1 week for the $4,000 expedition that was needed.
Wow.
To get the flights over there and pay for all the expenses of me getting there and coming back and doing the ministry for the 2 weeks, and had a life-changing experience there. Time doing ministry was the first time I'd really gotten an opportunity to share the gospel with people. There's definitely times growing up that I had shared the gospel, but it wasn't in like it was always in like an apologetics, like trying to defend, argue with people who disagree with me kind of setting. It wasn't really me sharing the heart of God to people who have never heard before, and immediately getting to see just what the power of God, when he's willing to show up and show how he can heal people right in front of my own eyes. I remember the first house that we went to, there was this woman who had very, very sickly. She had some sort of fever, and she just looked miserable the entire time we were talking with her. We shared the gospel with her. We ended up giving her a Bible. She accepted and even asked for extra Bibles for her kids. Didn't live on the island, but lived on the mainland.
Wow.
And it's like, well, of course you can freely give out more of the Bible. And we ended up running into her later in that day, but you wouldn't have recognized her if you hadn't actually sat down and talked with her, because she was wearing a completely different outfit. She was in a very pretty white dress and just dancing around in the middle of the street. And you're just like, what is this person doing? You walk past her, and she said, thank you for showing me the glory of God.
Wow.
And she's just dancing, holding a Bible, completely healed of her sickness. And it was well, whatever God's going to do, going to be amazing and awesome. And I have no idea how to understand even the slightest bit of it.
Yeah.
And that was just the start. And it just kept growing for the entire 2 weeks we were there. And it would have been, that was my first time going to Africa. I've ended up doing a total of 7 expeditions in Africa.
Wow.
6 of which were with Overland Missions, which is an organization that I'm now a part of. And 1 was with a separate organization that a church that I attend does support as well. All of it was mind-boggling at how God was willing to work, and it's been crazy to see, like, every single time I've been on an expedition, the Lord just somehow has to one-up what he did last time. So every single time it makes me excited for the next one that I'll be a part of. Like, I have no idea how it can be better than it was last time. So,
wow, that's pretty awesome. So you said you've done 8 trips?
7
trips, sorry. You've done 7 trips, and they were all to Africa?
I've only been to the same country 1 time. So the first 4 expeditions I did, 3 of them were with Overland Missions, and then the other one was with Good News Kenya. Good News Kenya was in Kenya, and then the other 3 with Overland were in Zanzibar, Madagascar, and Mozambique. After my time in Mozambique, I felt the Lord tell me that this was no longer a thing that I could keep doing just on the short term, but it was something that I was going to then transition into doing long term. So I then came back to the state and it ended up being about a 6-month notice. I told the chief that I was going to be transitioning into full-time ministry, and he was very, very unsurprised. He said from the moment you went on the first one, he kind of had a feeling like it wasn't going to be something that was just the short term. He immediately saw it, and when I walked into the office, I was talked to him. I was so scared. I'm just like, how am I supposed to quit doing something I love? It's like, hey, Chief, there's something I got to tell you. And the first words that came out of his mouth is he said, "You're quitting and you're moving to Africa." And so it made the conversation really, really quick and easy.
Was he a Christian?
Yes, that was one of the awesome parts about working at that department. That was one thing that I noticed right in the interview was the chief's face. He asked me a lot of questions about it after looking at my resume. It was really cool. For the longest time, it was just me, him, and another officer at the department that were Christians. Part of what I was doing in mental health also was working as our department's officer wellness, and I was also our chaplain liaison officer. So I was in charge of scheduling chaplain ride-alongs with the officers and getting them connected with him as a resource. And
okay.
As soon as he saw that I was interested in wanting to do like the mental health stuff, he's like, "Well, if you're interested in doing our chaplain stuff, I've wanted to get a program for that started the entire time I've been chief." So that was also part of what we were doing, or what I was doing at that department. But after I ended up resigning, it was hard to give up all the specialized roles. Seemed like that was what I had spent so much time and effort. It was all my college, and then the 4.5 years leading up to that. So almost 9 years of work to get me to that spot, to kind of lay it all down, to then attend advanced missions training over this last summer, which is where I then did the last 3 expeditions that I've been on, which one of them was in Zambia, and then the other 2 were also in Mozambique. So it would be three expeditions in Mozambique.
Okay. What do you think God's teaching you about dependence? I mean, you don't have the safety net of the career or that structure of a 40-hour week, or what's God teaching you?
That is probably the hardest lesson of the spot I'm in. Going into making the commitment of wanting to do missions work, finding a country that the organization would be willing to send me to, even one as kind of chaotic as the Democratic Republic of Congo. All of that's been kind of easy, but going like, oh, I have to trust God to supply my funds for that, which it's funny. It seems so different from where I was at, of having that hourly wage and going, all right, I know how many hours I need to work to make this much, how much is going into my savings and all that direction. It's not any different from being in a fundraised for nonprofit position, because I'm still getting paid, I'm still getting money, and it's all coming from somewhere. But the feeling of going like, all right, I actually have to go out and ask people to help me in this process. And trusting that the Lord's going to send me the right people, as opposed to just having a paycheck that goes my bank account every other week. So the opportunities that has come from that is now I'm trusting the Lord for even more than I had before, even if I didn't realize it or not. He's done some pretty cool things. Like I was sharing about the time that I went to Zanzibar. I got fully funded for that trip in 1 week. It's been really cool to take the opportunities to connect with people, and then really build bonds. Can then stir into partnerships of getting me into the fundraising from that space of going, well, the Lord is using the difficulty of trying to make those connections to get people involved in what I'm doing. And that it's not actually about me, it's about what he's doing in his work. And so as long as I'm obedient and willing to listen to where he is sending me and who he has for me to meet, then it's something that will be successful. And that's not always, as I shared earlier, it's not something that's super easy, because coming from a law enforcement background of wanting to control situations, of going like, all right, I'm going to pre-plan everything to try to minimize damage when it comes up. Or not have anything scare me or surprise me when it happens. Or at least having a plan to back up on it. I just have to trust the Lord in those spaces now. I don't really have a choice. And it just really opens the door to see God move.
It does. What would you say to the man or woman who knows God's calling, but they're scared to obey? I mean, because you took a big step of faith.
Yeah, for me, going from the space of knowing that I had spent so much time trying to get there and really enjoying the spot of where I was at, knowing that the Lord was calling me into something different meant that there was something greater there. And a really cool opportunity that I ended up having while I was in the missions training this last summer. There was a night where we were taking time to pray for each other, and there was somebody who came over and prayed for me. I received what he had to say, and it was good. Didn't really feel like it was what was on my heart. I stepped back into the room that we were in, let other people get prayed for, and this pastor who I had one passing conversation with, he really knew nothing about my life except for the fact that I had mentioned that I was a police officer. He came over to me and prayed for me, and he said, or I asked if I had been prayed for. I said, yes, I had. And he's like, well, I don't know if you've had everything that you needed to be prayed for. And it's like, well, enlighten me.
Yeah.
He started praying for me and said that this is what was stirring in my heart was the difficulty with giving up everything that I had to move into this new career field. He just prophesied over me, saying what the Lord sees what you're giving up, and he's going to give you something far, far better. Everything that you've had and you've enjoyed up until this point is going to be eclipsed by what he's going to show you next. And so if the Lord's asking for you to give something up, and you look at every example of it in the Bible, there's something greater that's going to come from that. You look at Abraham and the struggle that he had so much with, first of all, having Isaac, and then going into the space of being willing to sacrifice him for the Lord. And then God turning that into Abraham becoming at some point down the line, the father of Jesus himself through the lineage.
Mm-hmm.
Just all that willingness to trust. The Lord will do something with it. He doesn't turn a blind eye to the things we give up for him. He's well aware of it all, and he's just waiting for you to lay it down so he can give you something better.
Amen. What do you feel like the calling God has placed on your life now? I mean, what is your future looking like?
So I've only just been getting involved with the organization that I'm now joining. I've been aware of the organization for about 4 years now, and I've got connected with my friend Zach, who introduced me to the organization, and gotten to talk with him about what it looks like. And it's not a very rigid or like plain thing. It's a very malleable, always changing kind of field. But what I will start out doing is through the training program, they get you connected into the organization. The training is to prepare you for full-time ministry, not even necessarily missions ministry. The organization would hope that you would want to do missions ministry. Obviously, that's their heart, and they would want you to get involved in that as well. But if you take all that you learn through the training and bring it back and do ministry wherever you're from, that's okay. If you end up doing missions ministry with another organization, as long as you're being led by the Spirit, that's what's important in doing God's work. It doesn't have to be with that organization. For me, getting connected with the organization and feeling like it was a good fit for me, I really felt like it actually kind of connected similarly to how I felt about the chief that I had back at the department I was working at.
Yeah.
Of just knowing that he had interest in seeing me succeed and wanting to connect with me, and really just being just another one of the guys at the department. And I've gotten a really good feel for that from the leadership of the organization of Overland. And so that's kind of what drew me to that. I knew it was good people. I knew my friend Zach, and then everybody he's introduced me to from the organization. It's all been high quality individuals, and so I knew that was what I wanted to be a part of. So then it was just a matter of figuring out where I fit in with the organization. And what was really cool, kind of how I got to this, I went into the training knowing the Lord was telling me to give up where I was at to send me to somewhere better. And I had no idea what country that looked like, if I would even be doing a specific country, or if I'd be bouncing between countries, what all that looked like. And so I had that in my mind going into it, that the organization was going to find a good fit for me, and that's just where I was going to end up. Halfway through the training, I was sitting down at a prayer night that we had, and I was very, very happy with where I was at. I was dwelling on the Lord, and he ended up giving me a vision of Congo, and I was like, whoa, like I could vividly see the country.
It sounds snaky to me. And I don't like snakes. I'm like, Lord, I love you. I'll do whatever you want me to do, but please don't send me someplace snaky.
Yes, there's going to be snakes. Actually, probably more snakes than anywhere else I've been.
Yeah.
Not even like small snakes. It's going to be mambas are going to be everywhere.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That's why I live where the air hurts my face. It's okay to be cold.
Yep, and then it's also going to be hot too. But the Lord just showed me the country, and it's like, all right, Lord, what is this? And then as I was experiencing this vision, two of the leaders of the organization came up to me and laid their hands on me and prayed for me and said, the Lord's going to give you a specific country. It's like, well, I think that's already happened. And so I'm just like, all right, Lord, if this is what you want, this is where you want me to go, then just get me excited about it. That's all
Yeah.
you have to do. Make me want to go, and I will go. So I got an opportunity to connect with some of the team members and really get an opportunity to see what ministry there looks like by testimonies of what that team had been doing. And one thing that Overland really likes to do is push for the people that we do ministry with to then step into ministry, whether that be local ministry of leading their own churches or Bible studies, or just taking up community leadership roles that are people who are filled with the Spirit and willing to lead their community in that same light, or people who want to go and do missions work in other countries or their own country in just a different area with the organization. The team in Congo has more Zambian and Congolese missionaries than it does American missionaries.
Really?
I'll only be the fourth American joining the team. So it's going to be a really, really cool opportunity to work with local missionaries.
Now, it might be a stupid question here, but what do you do about the language barriers? Is there usually interpreters for every place you go?
Yeah, so every expedition I've been on, we've had interpreters to translate to either Swahili or Portuguese, French or Malagasy, wherever we were at. Those are all people who have gotten connected with the organization and either help out in just a translation role or are a part of the team, and they have either other roles or their whole role is just translation. And that's what's going to be really cool about the Congo team, is that there's a lot of people on that team that already speak the local languages, so we won't have to go out and find translators. We'll have people on our team who can just already do that. I still have to do some language learning. My first year of being in the country, I'll be doing language school for French and possibly also Swahili.
Well, Bryce, you're taking up all my questions, so you just better answer them completely.
A lot of that's going to be what the first kind of year looks like, is just doing the language school as well, because I'll have to be able, I'm not going to be able to do full translation, but at least have the introductions to a conversation, or if I'm in one of the city areas, or if I have to go to the capital or like the airport for anything with immigration, then I can at least have the preliminary introduction. That way I don't have to really struggle with that language barrier.
Well, based on these 7 trips that you've gone, could you take us to the ground level reality? I mean, what does a day on mission or in the mission field actually look like? Not the Instagram version, the real version.
Every organization is going to run differently. The time that I spent with Good News Kenya in Kenya was really, really good, and they function in a different way.
That's the one my wife went on also, right?
Yes, I was also on that trip too. So getting to experience Kenya in that way, getting to do the kids ministry there was a whole lot of fun. And there's also going to be a lot of overlap with that in what I'll be doing too. But the predominant part of it is just going to be discipleship, of looking at how can I get connected with a community there and lead them into furthering their own faith, so that they can then take the reins of their own ministries, so that I can then go and share the gospel in places in a new area and then do it all over again. So it's a lot of sitting down and having conversations with disciples, of going, all right, this person has responded well to the gospel. How can I push them a little bit to go into a spot where they're willing to take a little bit more of a leadership role? Especially in Africa, there's a lot of honor-shame culture, where a lot of them are not going to be willing to step out of their comfort zone to take a leadership role unless they are really, really confident in it, or if they've been pushed into it. So getting to share the gospel in these communities that have had nobody ever share the words of life to them, getting to then go into that space and go, all right, I'm willing to give you the tools as long as you're willing to take this step of faith to lead it yourself. And so giving them the encouragement, walking beside them while they're doing that. A lot of what we'll do is we'll be sitting down having Bible studies, and then after a point, just tell the group that we're with, like, I'm not going to lead it anymore. I'm here to learn from you. You teach me. Just giving that space for them to succeed, but also not just throw them out of the nest and let them fly themselves. Allowing them to have space to fail, but also giving them the tools to step back up from that. So that's what a lot of it looks like. And there's also a lot of logistical preparation that happens for what happens on the mission field. I'd say
imagine.
The amount of ministry that has to be pre-planned, and you can't just willy-nilly go out and go like, all right, I'm just going to go drive to this village and share the gospel for a day. It just doesn't happen that way. You have to pre-plan everything. And so sitting down and getting ready for the logistics, figuring out the money and the math behind being able to finance going and doing that. And realizing, all right, now that I'm going out there and sharing the gospel in this community, how much am I going to have to spend to be able to get back there to do follow-up? So I'm not just sharing the gospel, leaving, and not giving them any tools to be successful later. So that is a lot of what it looks like too. I'd say it would be nice to have it be only ministry, but I'd say it's about 50-50 of what it all ends up turning out to, of the logistics and the planning for it.
That makes sense.
What Overland likes to do, kind of how the organization functions, is on those expeditions. So the trips that I've done for like the 2 weeks, sometimes are a little bit longer, sometimes they're a little bit shorter. What we like to do is we like to go into a community and flood that community with the gospel for that time period. So what an expedition looks like is we'll go to a community, live with them. So we'll set up camp. We're going to be living in the community with them. They're going to be a part of. We're going to see them every single day. We'll go out into the community. We'll walk with them. They'll see us living with them. It's not only is it a really cool experience to find out how to live in a different culture than the one you've grown up in. But it really allows you to connect with people. Not only do they just share the gospel with you, and now you've received Christ, and that's exciting and awesome. But I'm also going to sit down and have a meal with you too.
Yeah,
that's a lot of what Jesus did too. So getting to just live life with them for that time period. And so what those expeditions end up being is we'll take teams from the U.S. or other countries and bring a team of anywhere from like 10 to 12 people out there, and let those people with their unique experiences and their unique testimonies share the gospel in that community for that 2 to 3 weeks or so. What's always blown me away is every single time I've been on an expedition, I ended up bringing a friend of mine out to the Mozambique expedition that I did last year, and he was a younger believer. He hadn't been around in the church for very long. His testimony was perfect for sharing the gospel in that community. And everybody else on that team, it was the perfect team to share the gospel in such a loud and explosive way, to see God move so much in a short time period. Yeah, and every single time it's been the exact right people. So we invite teams to come over on those short-term trips. And then after those short-term trips are over, team members who live in that country full-time, which is what I'll be doing in Congo, then go and lead those Bible studies. They get connected with the people who are either leaders in the community already who have received Christ, or people who have received Christ who want to step into those leadership roles.
Well, so you're going to be living there full-time. I guess my next thing, since you're going to eventually be there full-time, is how can people support you? Obviously, pray for you, which we're going to do. And Echo Nation, I'm calling on you to pray for Bryce too, as he goes through these things. But what's a way somebody can monetarily support you? Is there a website? Is there how does that work?
The most quick and efficient way to get it done is through the website that Overland has.
What is that website?
It's overlandmissions.com, but I actually have a specific page on there that's overlandmissions.com/donation/Boldus Congo, or something similar to that. I'd actually have to look up the exact URL, but it goes directly to a donation page that has my face on it, kind of explains what I'll be doing, as well as giving you a really quick and easy way to just be able to add funds, whether you want to do a one-time donation or a regular monthly support. Both are helpful. Right now I'm looking to fundraise for monthly support to get me over there, to keep me over there, as well as a launch cost, which includes purchasing a vehicle. So both are needed. Another way to access that would be through my Facebook page, which would be just Boldus Missions, and my link for that website is on there, as well as my other social medias on Instagram and Facebook.
For Echo Nation listeners out there, I will have a link to his site and a link to that Overland Missions in the description for this show.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Just going right to the website, I know a lot of people get a little weary of going like, all right, he's part of an organization, so how much of the organization is going to take out of that? Part of it does go to paying for like the base I'll be staying on, of going like, all right, we've got a team there who's living there, and part of what I'll be paying for is for that base, but that's for our team specifically. And there are times where I will send some of the money that I do get to the organization, but that is for our organization to purchase equipment for the whole organization to use. Everybody in the organization fundraises individually, so it's not like there's a corporate side of it of going like, all right, whoever's at the top gets fundraised for by all the people below them. That's not how the organization works. So all the fundraising goes directly to me, and there's not like a cut that comes out of it. So all the exact dollar amount that is given goes into my account for any expenses that I would have, whether it be regular ministry costs, for travel costs, or for anything that could possibly come up.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have that link in the description. Hopefully people can jump on there and maybe you can get some support from the Echo Nation out here. I want to get a little bit into, you've talked about the different mission trips you've been on. Who was one person on these mission trips that you'll never forget? Tell us their story.
Oh, that is so hard to choose.
It is, but I know with my wife's missions trips, there's always somebody she comes back to tell me about.
Whether it be somebody who I connected with on the team, every single time I've gone out there, it's been the people who I've gone out there with have become lifelong friends, and I still stay in touch with plenty of them. My girlfriend I met while I was on a team out this last summer, so obviously she's been really, really important to me. But out of all the time doing ministry specifically, there was an individual that we met on the last expedition I was on in Mozambique. There was a small little tropical island off the coast of Inhambane. It was called Rat Island, so we didn't really like calling it that, so we kept calling it the small island because there's two islands right next to each other.
Did you say Rat Island?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
But so the small island, we went out there, and I was actually, so how the organization does training is the last expedition you do in the training is completely led by those who are actively in the training. So the team of 12 of us that went out there, it was us, and we had translators with us and one staff member who pretty much was there just to make sure that we didn't die while we were out there. So we had to do all the
that's important.
The logistical side of making sure that we had enough food and water to get out there. There was no clean water on the island, so we'd have to boat everything that we needed to get over there and then bring it through waist deep water to get it off the boats into there wasn't like a dock or anything that we could use.
Wow.
So navigating all that was really, really interesting, and I actually got to be a part of, and I was in charge of the logistics of that trip. Went pretty well. There was some hiccups with like the transportation. Turns out I knew nothing about how tides worked going into that trip, and we ended up getting stranded on the big island overnight because we couldn't make it to the small islands because the tides went out. And so that was a mess up on my part, but it still ended up being really, really cool because we got to do ministry to our boat captains instead, which is a really, really cool testimony that I have of how that all kind of happened. But the individual that I really got to connect with on that trip, his name was Joaquim, and so part of me being in charge of logistics was to connect with the island leaders to ask for permission to run events or use the school that was on the island, or if we ended up hosting a soccer game on the small soccer field they had there. And so we had them help coordinate getting a team out there to play against us, which they did beat us very badly. But just getting to coordinate all that. And the one leader that I got to speak with named Joaquim, we did end up doing ministry at his house. We got to share the gospel with him. It was a small team that day. It was me and a couple of the other people that we had, as well as our translator. We got to share the gospel with him, and he immediately gave one of the most profound statements of faith I had ever heard after somebody who had just heard the gospel. He had heard the name of Jesus before, but had never really figured out who that was. He had been attending a church that was on the island that was not teaching the gospel. So he was aware and kind of had an idea of who he was, but never really got that connection. And he said, if what you say is true, then this changes everything. We got to ask him a little bit more about where he was at with his life. He wanted us to pray for his 2 children and his wife. His son lived in South Africa, and he hadn't seen him in a very, very long time. Unless the Lord worked a miracle, probably won't anytime soon. But his daughter and his wife lived on the island with him. And as we were getting to talk with him, and we were sharing a little bit about him, and we were about ready to pray for him and his wife, for his daughter. As we were about ready to pray, his wife and his daughter showed up. And he's like, I knew that the Lord was going to keep you long enough for you to be able to talk to them yourself. So we then shared the gospel with them. I'll get to hear their testimonies of where they were at with their lives. And what was really cool was one of our team members had a really good similar testimony to the daughter who was having a hard time finding a husband, even though there was a really small community, so there wasn't a whole lot to choose from because she was having a hard time finding a husband. I got to share the gospel with her, pray for a blessing in finding a husband, and we get to pray over his wife as well. But one thing we noticed with him was, all of us noticed it right away, is that he had witchcraft charms around his wrist.
Mm.
We all saw that right away, and then we asked him what they were. And he said that he had arthritis pain in his hands, and he put them on to help with that. And we asked him if they did, and he said sometimes it does, most of the time it hurts more.
Hmm.
It's like, well, why don't you take them off? And he's like, well, I can't. It does help sometimes. And it's like, well, if you are willing to put your full trust in the Lord, he will heal you. And at that time, we didn't tell him to take them off. We ended up getting to connect with him again later that night. I invited him to have dinner with the other leader on the island. Both of them and their wives came, and we had some of the locals some really good ocean fish. And so we cooked them up and prepared them for the leaders on the island. We then got to share the gospel a little bit more with them. I got to sit down and talk with them specifically about like what godly leadership looks like, and encourage them to lead their island a way that honors God and honors the people too, to kind of lead them into being a blessing to all nations, starting with their island. And so they were really receiving that, and they were very, very happy. They got to tell us a little bit about like the history of the island, which was really, really cool. And then really just getting to connect with them was so much fun, going like, all right, these are human beings who have real life stories, and they're just on a completely different side of the world from me.
Yeah.
But then also getting to encourage them to have that relationship with Christ. So while we were having dinner with Joaquin and the other leader, I ended up shaking his hand when he came in. I noticed he still had the witchcraft charms on his bracelet, or on his wrist, because I felt them when I was shaking his hand. It's like, oh man, Joaquin, you're supposed to take those off. We were sitting down, and every single night during the expedition, we took time to share testimonies from the day, and we let the both leaders be in on hearing what we were doing in their island for the ministry part of the day. And one of the team members on our team, he ended up sharing the testimony of how somebody chose to cut her witchcraft charms off of her and her child.
Wow.
I just looked over at Joaquin and was like, ooh, you could just see the gears turning in his head, and he looked like he was feeling really convicted. When he left, I shook his hand again, and he still had the charms on. It's like, all right, I know something's going to happen. The next day, his house was right next to our camp, and so we would have to walk through his property to get to anywhere we wanted to do ministry. And so I would come and say hello to him every single morning while we were heading out for ministry. And this morning, he actually came out and met me before I could actually say hello to him. And then he was waving his hands around. He was very, very quick to show me that there was no witchcraft charms on his arms anymore.
Amen.
That's awesome, Joaquin. Like, tell me how you got to that spot. And he's like, I had a dream last night, and the Lord told me that I need to take him off and trust him. And I was like, well, how do your wrists feel? And he's like, I haven't had pain in my wrists all morning.
Oh, praise the Lord.
And he was like, I'm going to tell everybody else that they need to take their charms off. And immediately Joaquin, this prominent leader on this island, is telling people to walk in light and not trust anything except for Jesus. And we ended up later in the week doing an opportunity to share how to share the gospel, and telling them it's really not complicated. You don't have to be a pastor. You don't have to be a missionary. You just have to know who God is and believe in your heart that Jesus is King, and then share that with people.
Amen.
Got an opportunity to bring Joaquin, and we split everybody who was at that meeting up into groups, and Joaquin was in the group I was in because I had already had that pre-established relationship with him. We went to the house with this one young lady at it, and he ended up sharing the gospel. We had a group of about 5 of the local islanders that came with us, and Joaquin would not let anybody else talk because he was so passionate about wanting to share the gospel.
Yeah.
And we kept trying to get him to go like, hey, maybe let somebody else share, and he just kept talking.
He was filled, man. His cup runneth over.
That was one of the cool things is I asked the translator, because he was speaking in the local language, so I didn't know what he was sharing. I was like, hey, what he's saying seem like it actually connects with what the gospel shares, or is it something that we've said throughout the week? And our translator said, I don't know where he came up with or got all this information about the gospel. It is not anything that we've said this whole week, but it's all true. So the Spirit was speaking through Joaquin, this girl, and things that he had never heard before, to minister to her. And it was nothing that we did except for introduce him to God, give him the opportunity to flourish in his relationship.
Sometimes that's all it takes.
I will remember Joaquin for the rest of my life. He's a really cool older guy. He kept watching over our camp the entire week. He kept thinking, just like, well, I don't want any of the local islanders to steal from you, because we want you to come back.
Mhm.
We want you to have a good memory and good rapport of us, so that
Yeah.
you come and pour into our community again. So he kept watching over our camp the whole time. If there was something that he saw, he was like, maybe don't leave that
That's really
item
cool.
out. Somebody might take that, which
Yeah.
set my top mind of going like, all right, I'm always watching around, making sure there isn't anything awry or anything
Yeah.
like that. Having him come up and go like, I know my people, I know that's the kind of thing they might steal. So we obviously want to go in there and not give them the temptation of going like, all right, there's these
Right.
people who have items that we don't typically get on this island, and we could use those. So it's setting up a space where we're not letting them be tempted in that way. So that was also good to kind of keep that relationship in the community well.
Yeah.
But also, Joaquin was very clearly the best dancer on the island. We would often do worship, and traditional African worship turns into a lot of clapping and dancing and singing in languages that I don't know yet. It turns into whoever is in the middle is going to be dancing, and so the island had maybe about 150 islanders on it, including kids. And the island was only about a full square mile, maybe a square and a half mile. So we got around on the island. We got to meet everybody there. So when we were in the meetings, almost everybody would show up to them. And so we would get to see everybody's dancing ability. And Joaquin would just blow it out of the water every single time.
That's great.
But
That's great. Well, is there any other stories you want to hit on before we wrap up? Anything else you want to share?
I could talk nonstop. I mean, it's been seven trips in Africa, and the Lord has done some crazy things. I've seen people healed from evil spirits. I've seen people manifest in front of me who have tried to attack me, getting to see them completely delivered. I've seen some radical healing. I thought this is one I'll share, and because this one was from my first time in Zanzibar.
Yeah, hit it.
Some really radical healing. Part of where we were at in Zanzibar was on the beach in Kiwangwa. We ended up running into a man who was a painter, and we went into his shop, because Zanzibar is a tropical island, and it's got a lot of resorts on it, and a lot of Asian and European travelers will come in and visit these islands. So there's a big tourism industry there.
Okay.
And find a way to produce some sort of curio or some sort of art piece that they can take with you, or that the people traveling can take with them, you can usually have a pretty successful business. And so this painter had some beautiful paintings in his little shop, and he told us that he had painted them all. And the team that we had asked him, like, well, which one are you working on right now? And he's like, all these paintings behind me are all a year old. I haven't painted in a year. And it's like, wait, well, if you're such a good painter, why did you stop? And then he showed us that he had a withered hand, and he was right-handed, and he ended up having a stroke and was completely paralyzed on his right side.
Oh.
And we ended up getting to share the gospel with him. He chose to receive Christ, and so it's like, well, not only do we believe that God can save you through the blood of his son, but heal you as well. So we prayed for him, and after a longer amount of time in prayer, he ended up being fully healed. And there was this huge pile of sticks and rubble on near where he was at. And he ended up just climbing up over that, completely healed. And we actually didn't run into him for the rest of that day. He kind of just seemed to run off. If I was paralyzed and I just got healed, I'd probably do the same thing. So
yeah, exactly.
But really, really cool opportunity to see the Lord do things in the Spirit that I had never had an opportunity to see before. Things where I just would love to have seen that kind of thing happen to people I was dealing with on the streets in law enforcement.
Yeah.
They're going like, hey, if I could just share all that I've gotten an opportunity to see the Lord do with you, your life would be changed. How could it not?
Yeah, exactly.
So just all the amount of time that I've spent through the expeditions, and not trying to say like that seeing people healed and set free is greater than seeing people set free of their sin and receive Christ and get the Holy Spirit themselves. But those do get to be the flashy parts of it as well, and it makes you cry every single time that you see the Lord work in that way. But really, the heart of it is getting to connect people to their Creator. I've gotten to be a part of I don't think I've hit quite 1,000 people so far, but plenty of hundreds of people getting to receive Christ for the very first time.
Amen.
That's such a privilege of going like the Lord has given those people to me to share the gospel to. And now I get to spend eternity with them in heaven as
praise the Lord.
as brothers and sisters. And it's such a unique experience. It is the one thing that makes me go, all right, I know for a fact that is the reason the Lord called me out of law enforcement into ministry, of going, all right, if I know that is where God is calling me and what he has, the work he has for me, I can get behind that. So I'm happy to go to Congo. Hopefully next year. I'm in the middle of fundraising. As soon as I'm fully funded, I'll get an opportunity to go, and I'm kind of anticipating that to be early next year, maybe February or March.
Okay.
However, it's all the Lord's timing, and maybe I'll end up being funded tomorrow, and I'll get to go a little bit early. I'm happy to spend time in Congo, but if the Lord calls me in a different direction after I've been there for a while, I'm happy to go wherever he sends me.
Amen.
It's just getting the opportunity to serve the Lord in the way that he calls, and whatever that looks like is what I want to be doing.
That's right. Well, Bryce, thank you for showing up today. Thank you for being real and for being obedient to the call God put on your life. Your story matters, and I'm grateful that you shared it with us. So thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to share. It's so hard to not talk about it. So getting the platform to be able to go, all right, this is what I'm doing and what the Lord has put on my heart, and getting to also invite people into that as well. I guess one last thing I'd like to say is that I would be very happy to partner with anybody who would want to send me over there and keep me over in Africa. But if perhaps something that I said stirred somebody to go like, all right, maybe I want to do one of these short-term trips. I'm not saying you have to go to Congo. Congo can be a little scary to some people. There's a lot of chaos that ends up happening there. But there's plenty of other countries that Overland is in. An expedition would be possible for you to go on. They're not as complex as it seems to share the gospel. You really just talk and be real with people. That's all it takes to share what the Lord's doing in your life, to then share that light to other people.
That's right.
I guess I don't know if I gave out my email either, but the best way to, if anybody would have questions about getting on an expedition, or maybe even considering doing the missions training that I did over the summer, which was 3 months of classes is mixed in with doing these expeditions. And my email is just Boldus, so 2 B's, OLDUS @overlandmissions.com. And if you would have questions, you could also reach out to me there, or any questions about fundraising or any list of prayer requests, or if you would like to get on my newsletter to stay updated, that would be the best way to get added to my list. And that's how I send it all out, is by email.
Perfect. And again, I will have a link in the description for the show here that has all of Bryce's information on it. All right, Bryce. Well, thanks again. I really look forward to getting this episode out. It'll be about a month probably, but it'll be out.
It is Veterans Day today too, so happy Veterans Day.
Yes.
And I know it won't be Veterans Day when this comes out, but it's been really cool to get an opportunity to. I know a lot of my family is veterans. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to see my dad today, just to honor those people who've served. And I haven't served in the military myself, but it's a lot of respect for people who are willing to step into law enforcement or any sort of role where you're putting others before yourself. It takes a lot of heart and a willingness to let yourself be made lower to make others higher.
Amen. Thank you so much, Bryce. Yeah. And maybe after your next trip, we can have you on again, and we could talk a little bit about what happened there.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
All right, brother. Thank you again.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bryce, thank you for living what most people just talk about. Faith in motion. You traded the badge for a Bible, the patrol car for the mission field, and you're still protecting and serving, just on a different front line. If you want to keep up with Bryce or support his mission work, check the links in the show notes. And if God's been stirring something in you, maybe this is your nudge. You don't have to move overseas, but you can still move in obedience. And hey, if you'd like to know more about my own story, you can find my book, Echoes from the Sandbox, on Amazon. And remember, whatever platform you're listening on, share, like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. It helps more people hear stories just like this one. Until next time, real talk, Raw faith, stay unfiltered, and God bless.